Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Weather Center Nazario here with an urgent update. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is 4:05 in the morning, 8/30, 2023, August 30th, 4:05 in the morning. We have the latest information not only from NHC, but I've been watching shortwave IR for quite some time. We have a well-defined center of circulation beginning to work its way towards the panhandle of Florida, and we are seeing that iconic move to the right, okay? Current projections from NHC as of the 2 o'clock update put it right into Apalachicola Bay. It looks like the storm is going to jog just to the right of this. And those of you a little bit further to the east, right around in the general, let's see when this pulls up, right around in the Fish Creek, Salem, Steinhatchee, and just to the further off to the south, Sewanee area could see a bit more of this storm than we were anticipating. We waited for the last minute to finally make this move. And if you can see on infrared right here, there is a clear turn to the northeast. Starting right about here, there's the center, and we go towards the very back end of this loop, and you can see she's shifting. She's shifted quite a bit, and she's headed straight towards the coastline in a more northeasterly fashion. This is where the projected landfall site is. It looks like it's going to be somewhere in this general area. This storm is still intensifying. Her central pressure is approaching the 950 millibar area. As you can see on radar, you can clearly pick out where that eye wall is, and there is that turn to the right, turn towards 40 degrees east-northeast as opposed to more due north like NHC was anticipating. Along the eastern side of the storm, we have countless feeder bands working their way through the interior parts of the peninsula of Florida. We have not seen too much in the way of tornado-warned or severe-warned storms, thankfully. However, with the increase of daytime heating in the next couple of hours, I anticipate this is also going to go up as we get a little bit of a resurgence of surface-level instability, and we get a lot of turbulent mixing with the rising air and leftover moisture that's already been falling since this event started to take place. What this means for you guys in its path, we'll take a look at windy.com real quick. What this means for those of you still with the ability to tune in, well, if this continues its eastward jog, what that means is we're going to see a huge piling up of storm surge inundation in this quadrant of the state. From Spring Hill to the north, you guys are probably already seeing it. There's probably a tremendous amount of flooding going on. I haven't looked at the latest storm surge charts. I wanted to get this update out to you guys immediately, because this is going to change things. The area bracing for landfall is likely going to see just a hint of a less of impact with this, especially as that wind field wraps around the northern and western flank of it. You can see it in the windy streamlines here. All the water near Panama City and further west to Crestview, and even parts just to the south of Tallahassee along the coastline. Let's go back to my map here. Along the coast of Apalachee Bay, Alligator Point, Tate's Hell State Forest, St. George Island, Apalachicola itself, you're going to see waters start to recede and be pushed offshore thanks to the wraparound flow around this storm. We're looking at a potential landfall area somewhere within this general area. She may wobble back and forth just a little bit, but you can see on radar and satellite imagery. I'll cycle back through it one more time. Taking a second glance at a close-up infrared image here, you can see that there is an indication that the eye wall is shifting to the east ever so slightly. It will still be coming on shore in the Big Bend area. It isn't a dramatic shift, but this is that iconic, that trademark storm just before landfall making an easterly jog. Thankfully, it was a lot further north up here. Otherwise, this could have deviated the track and impacts for the entire state altogether. I feel for the people in the path of this storm. I believe she's able to strengthen down just a little bit more before finally rolling its way on shore, and it's going to be a fast event. The storm surge is going to suddenly rush in. The worst of the swells and the surge heights is going to occur within the next 45 minutes to an hour, and the wind speeds are not going to deplete until this system can work its way far enough downstream to no longer pose a threat. Those of you in the direct path of this eye wall, if you are able to watch this video, seek shelter immediately. Those of you able to tune in or are watching any sort of weather apparatus at this time, please seek shelter. Take cover, get out of its way as we can right now, because landfall is imminent. Landfall is going to occur here within the next couple of hours. She's getting ready to come on shore. I would assume by 6 a.m., no later, we're going to have this eye inland over the northern parts of the state of Florida. With this turn to the right, we're looking at the HAFS-A model. This is your simulated reflectivity. A lot of the eye wall core storm or core musculature is going to be wrapping around vigorously along the eastern and northeastern flank of this storm. storm. Looking at satellite imagery right now, we don't have that right front making its way inland just yet. You're about to be breached. The threshold is about to be hit, so any moment now, conditions are going to be at their worst and approaching maximum intensity within the next hour or so. If we take a look at the lower dynamics, wind speed is going to be going through the roof here momentarily. You're going to be in the strongest core of the winds as she gets ready to move her way inland. The HAFS-A model is indicating anywhere between this is upwards of 100 knots. 100 knots closest to the center, and this is sustained winds. These are sustained winds. This is not the gust product. This is sustained winds. We're looking at somewhere around 100 knots closest to that north right quadrant of the storm as it comes ashore. And because of this easterly fetch, we're seeing that shift. So those of you who were not anticipating seeing such an intense wind field coming over your area, this is likely to actually change and transition further to your area towards the east. Folks, this is a very serious situation. This is definitely escalating a lot more quicker than we probably could have anticipated. We'll have a 5 o'clock update, if not a public advisory update as of right now. It looks like there's an update tab here. I would like to see if they're still anticipating strengthening of this storm. Yes, that Idalia continues to rapidly intensify. The maximum sustained winds have increased to 125 mile per hour winds with higher gusts in the center. I would not be surprised if your area in the northern parts of Florida are seeing 100 mile an hour winds getting ready to make their way inland. We are probably going to see a sudden surge of an increase just before she makes her way onshore, because this storm is going to continue to tap into those Gulf of Mexico waters until she is finally inland. Once that eye is over land, that's when we will finally get its life support cut off. But until then, she is going to continue to blossom. And if we're seeing a rapid intensification last minute, like a lot of us were hoping wouldn't take place, then there is a chance we could see winds begin to reach 130 to 135 miles per hour before she can finally move inland somewhere to the west of Apalachicola Bay. Somewhere in this general area. I'll take you over to the topography again. Here's Apalachee Bay. Here's Apalachicola. We were predicting a landfall somewhere in this general area pretty much the majority of the day. I think it's going to be further off to the east. Not a huge shift when you're talking about it geographically speaking, but when we're talking anatomically with this storm, that would indicate that what was once going to be the strongest area of impact in this general region is going to transition off to the south, maybe 30 to 50 miles, and you're going to see it a lot more into these urbanized areas approaching the Gainesville area, Newberry, Trenton, Bell, Branford, O'Brien, and further north towards Lake City, White Springs, Jacksonville. This brings you way back into the equation, especially if she continues on that path. Let me declutter my screen. Especially if she continues on that eastward path, Jacksonville, you can expect hurricane conditions within the next 4 to 6 hours. She's only going to continue to pick up speed. We're down here in Central Florida. Central Florida, I can openly admit we have not seen much in the way of tropical storm intensity level winds. It seems the wind field was not as wide stretched to the east as some of the chart data would have suggested. I've been looking outside every other hour. There have been maybe instances and whispers of what could be tropical storm force gusts, but we've been seeing a lot more gale force winds between 25 and 30 miles per hour, elevated to about 35, 38 miles an hour whenever we have a good enough squall line coming through. So honestly, I can openly say Central Florida, once again, just like with Hurricane Ian, despite all the flooding, we've dodged a significant bullet here. Northern Florida, my thoughts, prayers for all of you in this storm's path are with you, especially now more than ever. We've seen an easterly jog in the center. I'm going to repeat myself before we close out this breaking episode of Weather Center Nazario. I'm going to bring you back to the radar imagery once again. You can see at the start of the loop, we were situated somewhere in this area. She is moving off to the north-northeast, about 30 to 40 degree angle. That's going to put her in a little bit further to the east of where our storm center is expected to make landfall according to NHC. And I can't iterate enough, I can't emphasize enough that the reason I'm even breaking into this is because there was a small sliver of the Big Bend area anticipating the worst of this storm, and they're actually not going to see it. It's actually going to be extended out to the east, especially as that eye wall becomes more concentrated with the rapid intensification that we're seeing. Storm surge is going to be at its max here very soon. The swell height is going to be at its max here very soon. Once that strongest core of winds can make its way close enough to the shoreline, all that water is just going to be forced inland. So there is widespread flash flooding expected to occur, if not already doing so, and maximum levels of inundation to take place within the next 1 to 3 hours, and those waters are not likely to recede until well after this storm has passed. Folks, if you're watching this, if you have any bit of resiliency, any little bit of ability to tune into this, please take shelter, take shelter, take shelter. Get in the centermost portion of your house. Stay away from windows, close and lock all doors, make sure that there are no openings in your house to allow for pressure differences and tendencies to fluctuate, because that's where most of your damage begins to occur. I know we're not talking tornadoes, but the same principles apply with such a vigorously deepening low beginning to push into your area. Please brace yourselves, sustain yourselves, protect yourselves. Put whatever you can between you and the outside as this storm roars its way in. It's only going to last a certain amount of time. She's not going to be a slow mover like Hurricane Ian. Once she comes ashore, you have a very limited period of time where the worst is going to be on top of you. You just have to make it through that. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. This is Weather Center Nazario. I'm going to sign out. I will see you later on today with a new update, hopefully once this storm has fully blown over the Florida area and has started to work its way towards the Georgia-Florida line. Jacksonville, you're next. We got to start watching. I will have a new update here within the next 4 to 6 hours with new information, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, folks, again, thank you. This is Weather Center Nazario signing out.